So, Darwin, can you introduce yourself? Tell our audience who you are and what you do.
My name's Darwin Cornell Smith. I'm the general manager of Lake Stevens Sewer District in Lake Stevens, Washington, that provides sewer services to the incorporated and unincorporated areas.
So as I understand it, the sewer district was really pretty instrumental in helping the area to grow because you had pretty big concerns over polluting the lake, and you guys have been pretty instrumental in making sure that the growth happened without destroying that natural resource. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, it's more than a fair statement. That's indeed the reason that the university studies that in the 50s said to form the district, and it took on the problem of the lake and basically recovered the lake.
Now, I understand that you use a lot of technology to really manage the resources there, and you met CMIT Solutions, who now works with you. How were you introduced? How did you meet CMIT?
I met CMIT through Mr. Jan Larson of Larson Financial Services. And Jan's a really very, very sharp guy who's very, very organized. So if Lon thinks someone's organized or serves a good function like that, putting it together, he recognizes that. And so Lon knew that I was in this kind of activity where I processed and needed a lot of IT kind of activity going on. And Lon had a good experience at CMIT, the local folks, soon John, and suggested I get a hold of him. As I was really in the market looking for better IT solutions, contact him, and the rest is history, so they say.
So what were some of the problems that you were having with your other IT resources that made you look to CMIT?
The problems we needed to solve were more like I solved with engineering and everything else. They were more consultant-based kind of problems needed to be solved in terms of promoting programs, proposing programs, setting up monitoring, making sure it's happening, scheduling time, making resources available, all those things that a good consulting firm does. So the big transition I kept looking for in IT support was moving from being spatially geeks to true consultants.
There's a lot of people out there that can turn a screwdriver and fix your computer, but there's not a lot of people that are good strategic advisors who really help you look at what your challenges are and come up with solutions to fix those challenges rather than just come in and sell you a piece of technology. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Exactly. There's more than just doing patches or going through and cleaning out the virus or whatever. It's a total system management kind of problem and monitoring, and set up organized kind of reports and information for you so that you have a way to relate to your computer as a tool and system that's managed as compared to something that you have that is overwhelming and it becomes its own existence and doesn't serve you anymore. You're serving it. And that was the problem I have with IT up to this point. A lot of times, if you wanted the product, you ended up paying spatially time, and you were paying for experimentation, essentially. There was no control of those activities. There was no proactive thinking going on. And the resources, you were limited to just the spatially of that individual's interest because you were relying on these people. Otherwise, you had to stop and become the computer expert. And be very candid, running a public agency, you don't have time to be that. What I really needed was computer experts to finally become business experts with that information and form consulting capabilities. And that's what CMIT did for me. John's easy to deal with. He's a good businessman, a very sharp businessman, being able to read problems and put the right people at right places. Sue's got a very good knowledge of the industry, of the business model that CMIT is, and the things that she's doing in that and all the resource opportunities out there. And she's good at organizing then the real technicians and making sure those technicians are organized and getting out to the problem. It's a good team. There's a good organized team.
Well, tell me, I think the public would be particularly interested in this. I was fascinated with how advanced the sewage treatment facility had become in terms of the ability to monitor it with computers and why it became so important for you to have a managed services system to back this up. So can you give us kind of, without getting into too much detail, give us kind of a thumbnail of how computers and software actually help you manage the sewer district?
You've got to have the information. The only chance you have to keep sewage where it needs to be, and we're very proud of being able to do that around here, and we receive awards for it, but the reason is because we take our monitoring very seriously and the management of that information about those systems seriously. And you cannot have downtime. 20 minutes can spell disaster in my business. The equipment has to work nonstop. People don't realize this. There's a lot of equipment, a lot of machinery, and it has to work nonstop without fail, 24 hours a day, forever.
As I understand it, what CMIT did was put in systems so that even if you were at home, that somebody was able to monitor the system 24/7, and if any alert came up that a computer system was down, that you would be notified immediately, even if it was 3 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, you would get notified. Is that correct?
Yeah, there isn't a time in the week when it's convenient for us not to know now. No, you got to know all the time, and yes, we got that. And CMIT, and Sue particularly, really understands that very well about how to create those kind of systems.
So how important was it that your local CMIT solution was not just a guy fixing computers, but was backed up by a larger organization like the CMIT franchise? I mean, was that an important issue for you at all?
Yeah, I mean, that was the problem I was having with IT for the last 10 or 15 years, is for the industry to realize it wasn't a bunch of specialized geeks who, well, we're going to do this because these other geeks wrote software, and we like to play with computers. It's fun to wear my Star Trek T-shirt or, my math T-shirts, but I got news that what we really needed was a business model that organized these people into a effectual force and then presented, again, like I said, a consultant approach to this. It was critical. You could not do the things you needed to do electronically and take advantage of what software is out there and how it can serve you without getting this. And plus, it has got so voluminous without having experts in the field with all their resources and support inside to come to you to provide these things. You could not get to all this information. I would never get anything done but sit around and worry about computers. And I have other things besides computers I have to worry about.
So can you give us a couple of examples of things that you can do now after CMIT has worked with your system that you couldn't do before?
Probably the best example of what I can do now that I couldn't do before I had CMIT is I can now not worry about whether or not my computers are working. I don't have to worry about whether or not I'm having to check to make sure that the people I'm hired are watching that information so I can tell whether or not it's actually being watched. These are different than the answer I know you expected in terms of, so I can do this now. Well, I've got backup, I can monitor, I get reports, I can see where all the things that are coming in, I know where I'm having risk and threats from spyware. All those things are very valuable, but most valuable is I now can rely on my IT people to take care of my IT problems and keep that IT system up and running in a proactive manner. That is something before I could not rely on, and that is where I lost time and money, and responses were always expensive and unique to the moment. I now have a system.
Tell me a little bit about that, because you're a government agency, so cost is always important. Taxpayers are concerned about you spending money wisely. When you look at the total cost of what you were doing in terms of the kind of break-fix solution and when there's a problem we fix it versus this proactive solution, do you have any sense of whether you're saving the taxpayers any money here?
To get the same just basic kind of service, I ended up spending about 20% to 22% as much as I was spending.
Are you saying that it's less expensive now than it actually was before?
Yeah, I spent about 20 to 22% to get that first basic service I used to try to get without even getting anything special. Overall, I've added the packages, and I've got this triply more efficient system with all this backup and much more versatility and protection, and that's probably still 30% of what I was originally. I'm only paying 30% of what I was originally paying.
So it's actually less money and more service?
Yeah, way more service, and we're talking significantly less money. I'm going from the specialist IT guy, nice guys, but going to this kind of good business model with all these resources that can be concentrated and work together. I'm spending 30% of what I was spending to do this work, and it's happening, and I don't have to think about it anymore.
What do they like to work with?
Oh, they're a lot of fun. Sue's always somebody who's got something new she's heard about that might apply to you. If there's something that could help you, Sue's talking to you about it. And it's not trying to sell you something. She's excited about this opportunity. That's sort of refreshing because I'm not being pushed about buying the latest gadget for the sake of the latest gadget. I'm buying things that she's looked at that could fit to the system and make the process work better. And here's the opportunity. And, that's good. That's what they like to work with. They're a part of my staff. They're a consultant, but they become part of my staff. They're like my engineers or my accountant or my financial advisor or my appraisers or my underwriters. They're that group of people now as compared to being a specialty contractor off on the side like the guy who cleans your office.
So what would you say to another government agency out there? I mean, government agencies always have a little more challenge than independent businesses who can make choices, and they have no restrictions in terms of how they go about hiring people and so forth. But what would you suggest to any government agency that may be looking at improving their IT systems in terms of when they might want to consider an outside approach like CMIT?
In this day and age, outsourcing is an important function for government to look at. With groups like CMIT, one of the biggest things they've done for themselves, as compared to being a small works contractor approach, actually can look at them and request for proposals and treat them like consultants and hire them based on skills, and then you can negotiate your contracts. I would think that the people that need to realize that probably the most cost and effective thing they can do, and that it isn't well accepted yet, nobody really has gripped this in governments or schools or stuff, is you need one relatively IT liaison is smart enough to talk to your IT people, but you don't need to be putting on staff IT people like we've done for so many years. That is not cost effective. It is just not efficient to create a whole IT department. Oh, I know we got a huge amount of computers. No, CMIT can deal with those issues. You're much more cost efficient to go the consultant-based route, I'm absolutely convinced, than trying to create an IT department and then hire FTEs constantly, up and down.
Don't a lot of government folks, I mean, I always hear from, whenever I do interviews in the government sector, there's always questions about, we know who offers the best service, we know who offers the best, but, we're a government agency, we often have to go with the low bid, and even though the low bid we know isn't necessarily the best, is there any way that...
See, that's one of the problems that the specialty contractor approach to this problem has created. These guys are small works roster guys, and I would put out requests for proposals for groups like CMIT, and then you can review on a statement of qualifications, select the person that you think is best qualified, and then negotiate a contract with them, because they are consultants. This is one of the biggest things that CMIT and everybody needs to keep pushing, is move out of trying to be a contractor to being a consultant in the government world. They provide the exact same kind of services and expertise and intellectual property that engineers or architects or the other groups do. That's a departure from the way people have looked at it and the way government has looked at it, but that is the way to look at it, and that is the way to approach hiring IT people is as a consultant, so that you are able to take your proposals and select by qualifications and negotiate contracts separately. And that's the best way to do this job. It's worked so well for me, too. That's what's really, I have cost control because I'm dealing in this way that I haven't had in the other approaches. That's one of the greatest things is I can talk about how much the costs are and go through with John the cost effectiveness of it or not, good advice, right down to the point that, you could do this, but why spend that money? I don't think your risk issue is so great that money's well spent, Darwin. When was the last time you heard a contractor tell you that?
Right.
You hear consultants tell you that all the time because that's their job, and that's what John and Sue helped me do. They know that I'm relying on them as the experts in a field to give me good consultant advice. And they do that, and they help me through those things. And because of this and because of the reports and where we look at the work and we see what's working, what's not working, where the failures were, what's done, what's not done, all those things allow us to do cost control effectively inside this organization and in my relationship with them. That saves money right through the organization. These are opportunities that aren't the norm about how people think about this task. They think of this task as a contractor task. It is not. And it's going to take a while, but that's where we got to keep pushing, both in government and in the industry. The industry needs to establish itself as a stable standard kind of thing as compared to the IT geek specialists. Those are the guys that Sue hires that brings in and solves all the problems on the short term in here, but the business model's above that. That's where CMIT has made the departure and broke the mold with classic IT activities that I've had to deal with. It's worked as I predicted it would when I got to this level of service and understanding. I'm covering more things now for less money and have more control of them.